Good evening. Thank you, Doron. Welcome, everyone across the globe. It's always very exciting to be here with you at the library's International Reading Room. My name is Dr. Raquel Ukeles. I am head of collections here at the National Library of Israel, and I will be your guide this evening for the final program in our series of introductions to Jewish museums around the world. Now, of course, this is one of the benefits of this awful and bizarre time we live in, where we're not able to go physically and travel. So we're doing it virtually. Tonight we are heading to Vilna, to Vilnius, the city that was once called the Jerusalem of Lithuania, home to a very large and an illustrious community of Jewish scholars, intellectuals, writers, artists, and activists before the Holocaust, and home to a diverse, interesting Jewish community today. Now, the National Library has many important works that were written by hand in Vilna and that were printed in Vilna. And we also have two very interesting, powerful archives that I just want to mention before we get started. One is an archive of the Vilna Ghetto that was donated to the library in 1994 by the great poet and remarkable figure, Avram Sutzkever. Sutzkever donated his own archive to the National Library in 1982. Sutzkever is one of several personalities that link our collection to the museum that we are excited to visit this evening, the Vilna Gaon Museum of Jewish History. Our featured guest tonight is Dr. Kamilė, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Dr. Kamilė Rupeikaitė, the dynamic director of the museum. Let me tell you a little bit about Kamilė. She was born in Kaunas in 1973 and completed her master's degree in music history at the Lithuanian Music and Theatre Academy in 1999. And then she studied at the European Jewish Institute called Paideia in Stockholm in 2004-2005, and then defended her PhD thesis in 2006 entitled Semantics of Musical Instruments in the Bible. Since 2007, she has worked at the Vilna Gaon Museum of Jewish History, and since April 2019, she has served as the director. Kamilė is also a researcher at the Lithuanian Culture Research Institute and has worked as associate professor at the Lithuanian Music and Theatre Academy for 12 years. She has published scientific articles in peer-reviewed Lithuanian and foreign publications, prepared over 200 reviews in cultural periodicals, and her interests include multicultural music contexts, the use of biblical motifs in professional music, and Lithuanian music. Good evening, Kamilė.
Good evening, Raquel. Shalom, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you. And first of all, I would like to thank National Library of Israel for inviting me. It's an honor to be able to talk about the museum. I worked for 13 years and to present the history of the museum. So welcome to my home in Vilnius.
Thank you so much. I want to start, if you don't mind, on a personal note and ask you, how does a person who studies music become a museum director? I know you have your own very interesting story that I would love for you to share.
Yeah, I'll try to be very brief because it's a long story and always I get carried away when sharing it. It all started when I was a teenager, when Lithuania started this movement towards the independence in the 1980s. And it all started with personal interest in the Bible. I saw the Bible, I got the Bible, and first I started reading the Christian part, the New Testament, and then I was also, I started reading the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible. And as I was studying music at the time, I noticed that there are so many musical instruments, names of musicians, different musical phenomena, and I became interested in that. So when I entered Music Academy, I started studies in old Jewish music, and then I went also to Vilnius University to study biblical Hebrew and biblical exegesis. And I met a wonderful teacher, Lara Lempertiene, who introduced me to this beauty and richness and depth of Jewish text. And since then, my journey started. And for as long as I remember, I was always interested in different cultures. But when I realized, and when I learned after the independence of Lithuania, that Jewish culture is not something which was alive many 100 years ago when we read the Bible, ancient Hebrew culture, but it was alive in Lithuania for so many 100 years, and it was so important here in this part of the world, and it all was destroyed. People were killed. The culture was destroyed during the Second World War. I was amazed at what Lithuania has lost, and somehow this interest grew even more. And naturally, after defending my PhD thesis, I started working at the museum. So this is to be very brief.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing right off the bat in a personal way. And I was very moved from our previous conversation and my own learning about the museum of how much you have brought your own research interests and your high standards of research excellence into the way you work at the museum. Can you say just a little bit about how you have bridged between your approach as a scholar and your approach as museum director?
Yes, Raquel, it's not always an easy question, I would say, because on the one hand, of course, the task of the museum is to be a trustworthy institution, that our activities and exhibitions and publications would be based on thorough research of the exhibits and their stories of historical context. And we have a wonderful team of historians and Holocaust historians who conduct this work. And we have also art historians who do research on art exhibits and present in our exhibitions. But on the other hand, we have to find the balance of how to present our exhibits and their stories in a way that would be understandable for every visitor, not only for scholars, but also for for children, for different groups of visitors. So sometimes sometimes my colleagues tell me that this is too scholarly. Come on, we need to make things in a more simple way. And by this I mean that, of course, we have to find balance between between thorough research, quality, and between presenting in such a way that it would be understandable for each and every visitor. But of course, standards have to be there. Definitely, we have to be an institution, and I want the museum to be an institution that everyone can trust what we do.
As a former academic, I very much relate to the balance that you talk about, and on the one hand, to build an institutional trust, and especially in Lithuania, that's not obvious. There's work there. And on the other hand, to be very open and reach out to many different kinds of audiences. I don't know if you're noticing, but we have a global audience here from literally across the world. It's very exciting, and I'm very, very happy that all of you are here. So let me just tell you a little bit about what we're going to do together so you can understand where we're going. We'll start by talking a little bit about the history of the museum. I'll give you a little spoiler. There's not one, but two origin stories to this museum. Each one of them are fascinating and very much relates to the modern history of Lithuania. And then we're going to hear about the different parts of the museum. The museum is spread across many buildings in downtown Vilnius, and each building picks up on a different aspect of Jewish history and culture and the Jewish experience in Lithuania. And then we will talk a little bit about how the museum navigates different kinds of identities, both from Jewish past and present, and also in modern day Lithuania. And towards the end, we will get a treat of a real virtual tour of some precious items that Kamilė has prepared for us so that we can visit the museum virtually. And so the precious items are a kind of desserts for those who travel with us on our journey. And then at the end, we will open it up to questions that you have an opportunity to write down as we go in the chat box. Okay, so that's what we're going to do here. Let's go back to the beginning. Kamilė, would you tell us about the history or the histories of this institution?
Sure. Raquel, actually, there are 3 stories.
Oh, really?
One story I hid from you. I'm joking. I'm kidding.
And I get to learn.
Actually, the origin, if we want to trace the very beginning of the Jewish Museum in Lithuania, so it started in Vilnius in 1913 even, before the First World War, when the Society of Jewish Antiquities, of Lovers of Jewish Antiquities was founded. And in a year and a half, the museum was founded. But unfortunately, it suffered greatly during the First World War, and many items were transferred to Russia. And here we have the influence of Shlomo Rapoport-Ansky, who brought these treasures back to Vilnius and helped to safeguard it, and the museum got his name. So this was the very beginning. And even in our collections, we have some artifacts with the stamps of this first Jewish society. And also we have stamps because in Kaunas they also operated the Society for Jewish History and Ethnography. And so it started in Vilnius and then it started in Kaunas during the interwar period. So we also have some artifacts from that period. And but of course, during the Second World War, what happened? So most of the treasures were looted, and here we have a very powerful and exciting story about intellectuals, Jewish intellectuals, who put the best efforts to save these treasures from destruction. And many of you, I'm sure, you know the Papier Brigade, Paper Brigade, who rescued treasures from the Vilna Ghetto from annihilation, and they hid in a different hideouts in the city. And we have these artifacts rescued, and a number of items in our collection were rescued by the members of the Paper Brigade. So can you imagine what powerful layers of history we keep at the museum? And after the war, survivors, of course, they wanted to bring these rescued items together, and initially they kept it in the apartment of the survivors of Avram Sutzkever, whom you have already mentioned, Raquel, and poet Shmerke Kaczerginski, who were members of the Paper Brigade and helped greatly to rescue these items. But eventually this apartment was too small, and the building of former Vilnius Ghetto Library was allocated as the place of keeping the valuables, and initially opening the first museum immediately after the war in 1944. So I will tell a couple of words more about the building, because when I will be showing our, excuse me, our exhibitional departments, I will talk about the building a bit. So this was the first museum opened in 1944, but unfortunately, it lasted only 5 years because it was closed in 1949 amidst the campaign of the Stalin regime. And then all these items were distributed to other museums in Lithuania. So then for 40 years, there was complete silence. Nobody spoke about the culture, identity, and history of Lithuanian Jews. And again, in the 1998, 1989, when the movement for independence of Lithuania started, it started in parallel the movement also for awareness of the Jewish identity. So Lithuanian Jews, they participated in this movement for fight for independence of Lithuania, and in parallel for bringing back their cultural and historical memory. So it all went hand to hand. And the first creator of the museum, of reopened museum, because it was reopened, because now we know the history, the past histories. So we can say the museum was reopened in 1989. And the first director and the initiator of the museum, Emanuelis Zingeris, he was also very active in this independence movement. He was a young philologist at the time, and he was in the forefront of this movement. And so that was the story. And actually, the museum, at first, the museum got one building, an old green wooden house, which is not related to Jewish history of the city. It's related to the communist history, actually. It was the first meeting of the Communist Party, which took place in that building. So it had nothing to do with the Jewish history at the time, but then we got more buildings, and I will tell more about it a bit later. And so in 1991, the first exhibition was opened, and the exhibition was dedicated to the Holocaust history of Lithuania. And it was the first exhibition on the Holocaust history in the post-Soviet territory. And it was created mostly by the survivors. It was created in a very modest design. These people who created it, they were not, of course, at that time we did not have professional museologists as such. These people had this passion in their hearts to tell the story, to tell what happened, to bring back the cultural and historical memory, and they did it. And then the museum got another building, and I will be showing pictures, in a minute. And expanded. The building of former Jewish gymnasium was given to the museum, so we had historical exhibitions. And then in 2000, another building, the former Jewish theater, was also given to the museum. Given, I mean, it belongs to the state. All these buildings belong to the state. We are a state museum. We use the buildings for the public purpose, for keeping the collections, for arranging exhibition. It belongs to the state, but we use it. So that's how we expanded. And also Paneriai Meskilling site, Paneriai Oponar, as it is known in the world, it also belongs to the museum, the site, where we take care of it. And I will tell a bit more about what is going to be there. Because we're expanding a lot, and all our departments, exhibitional departments, are expanding simultaneously. So you can imagine that it's really a huge task. So coming back to the question, so there are actually three stories, and yeah, it was very exciting period when our museum was reestablished hand in hand with Lithuanian independence.
I found it fascinating. The two that I knew about, and now the third one, because the museum's stories align with key movements in modern Lithuanian history, both Jewish history, but also general history. And when you shared right now about the first exhibition of the museum, after it was refounded in 1989, it's very interesting to me that the first step to reclaiming Lithuanian history separate from the Soviet history, right? The independent history of Lithuania was to grapple head on with the Holocaust, because it could have been to go back much further to, the storied history of Lithuania past. But it seems that the people who founded this museum, again, were willing to look at the dark chapter of Lithuanian history before the Soviet period. I find that remarkable.
Exactly, because it was the very first attempt to speak about it. So it was a very brave attempt, and it was a need, actually, of the survivors, of the community, of these people who felt this passion to tell the story and to bring back the historical justice, because how they had to tell how it happened that Lithuania has lost absolutely the whole community of Lithuanian Jews. How did it happen? And people had to know. And I must say, even though 30 years have passed, 31 even, we still need to talk about it and still this is the topic which is I cannot say that everyone knows, everyone is aware, and now everything is clear. No, we still have to talk about it, because of course there are competing memories, And sometimes it's still difficult, you know, for some Lithuanian, for part of some Lithuanian population to understand that this matters for the whole country, because these were our citizens. This was part of our society, integral part, and we have lost, you know, we have lost so many people, and so it's our pain. It's not Jewish pain, and so we still need to talk, and we're still doing it. And actually, you know, because we touched this topic, so I must say that since the very first exhibitions, we spoke very openly about the collaboration of Lithuanians with the Nazis, and we were telling, and we are telling history from different, you know, angles, about speaking about different groups who were involved, and we speak about collaborators, and of course we speak about rescuers. So, and we speak about victims, and I can speak. I know you have your, you know, your flow. I don't want to take too much of time here.
But I think it's a helpful starting point to the next question about the different parts of the museum, because it seems every museum has this balancing act. You know, we talked earlier about a balancing between, you know, the high level research and the public, right? Every museum has to balance between a focus on the past and a focus on the present, or when you tell stories, all the choices you make have consequences about how you tell a story and from which angle, as you referenced. But in this case, the beginning of this latest incarnation of the museum, where you start with the Holocaust to tell the story that you mentioned, that as Lithuanians sought independence and achieved independence from the Soviet Union and reclaimed their own history, they started with the what happened to the Jews? Where did they go? And that becomes the beginning of the grappling with the Jewish past or contributions to Lithuanian culture, that's part of the story of Lithuania, right? Am I understanding that correctly? That the story, the grappling with what happened in the Holocaust is a subject in its own right, but also part of this larger story of the Jews of Lithuania are part of Lithuanian history and part of Lithuanian culture. As you said, it's not just about the Jewish aspect of Lithuanian story. And
absolutely, and also as what I've told before, that we still need to put a lot of efforts to in order to tell the Holocaust history in full objective way, as much as it's possible. But still, we also have to speak about the input of Lithuanian Jews into Lithuanian culture, history, arts, scholarship, politics, into every economy, into every field. And still, you know, there are so many names and so many cultural and historical phenomena which are being rediscovered. And I would say that these 30 years are not enough, and so, you know, we have to continue this job, and that's why we're creating a new branch, and I will tell about it very soon. And yes, this homework Lithuania needs to do. It's fortunately a long process, and it's a painful process, but you know, it's going on, and I see the mission of the museum as a very important one. And of course, I've mentioned it has to be based on professional research, not on emotions, who is right, who is wrong, but on professional research and engaging presentation for visitors and for readers.
So I see a question about the location of museums. Maybe let's shift now. If you could explain to us the different branches of the museum, and also that they're each located in particular buildings, some of which have historical import, correct?
Yes, so I would like to share my screen because I have a slide with images. Great. That would be easier to.
Great.
Okay. Yes, I hope you are able to see it.
Yes.
Okay, so here you see side 6 slides. And so on the very top on the right, you see this green house I have mentioned, where the first exhibition of the museum was opened. And so this is still there today. We still have the exhibition dedicated to the Holocaust history of Lithuania. We still have there, but the house is very old. It's very humid. The conditions are poor, and we cannot show the original artifacts, which we have so many, and we have really precious artifacts. So what we are doing, we are creating a new museum dedicated to the Holocaust history of Lithuania and to the Vilna Ghetto. And you can see the arrow, right, where I am moving?
Yes.
Okay, so from this current Holocaust history exhibition, we will move. We will create the new exhibition here in this building, which I am showing on the below left. And this is the building of the former Vilnius Ghetto Library, which was the cultural center in the Vilnius Ghetto, and it housed, not only it housed the library, but it housed also the so-called Vilnius Ghetto University, and it housed some treasures were kept also there, and it had also the cellar where partisans used learn how to use weapons. And so it was a very, very important place. And for many years, this building stood neglected, and it was just falling apart. And you can see its condition. This photo was taken a couple of years ago, and you can see big photographs on the windows. So we put these photographs from our collections because we didn't have any money for the time to do something with the building. So we just wanted to pay the attention of passers-by and of Vilnius citizens and guests that this building was important, and we put some photographs found in the Vilna Ghetto on the walls. But today we have very good news that the Ministry of Culture allocated funding for creating the Museum of Holocaust History in Vilna Ghetto, and step by step we are in the process, and we're preparing the technical project. Of course, it will take 2-3 years at least, but the process is there. So I'm so happy, because for many years there was no guarantee that funding will be allocated. Yes, so this is one of our projects, and of course this old museum will not be there, and here we will be able to show the originals. We have amazing artifacts, witnesses to the history of the Holocaust in Lithuania, and we will have space to show it there. We will have the hall for education, so it will be much, much better than what the conditions we have now. Plus the building will be remembered in an active way. It will be part of the story, which is a very important thing. Now on top, on the left, you see the Tolerance Center and Samuel-Bach Museum. You see Samuel-Bach in the big letters. I think this was put when we had opened Samuel-Bach Museum in 2017. So this is our most recent department, opened in 2000. And this is the former Jewish theater, and we have the exhibitions dedicated to Lithuanian Jewish culture. We have art exhibitions, changeable exhibitions. We have one permanent exhibition there talking about rescued Jewish children, telling about the Shoah. And we have the cozy theater hall, and we do different events there. We do movie screenings, opening of exhibition, concerts, presentations, debates, many things. So, and also, we have opened the space for the Samuel-Bach Museum, and also we're expanding, because Samuel-Bach Museum will have 2 halls. Now it have 1 hall, and it will have the 2nd hall, because Samuel-Bach, survivor of the Vilnius Ghetto, he is our friend of the museum. He lives near Boston, and he donated his works, a big collection of his works, to the museum. It's another fantastic story, and I could talk about it for many hours. And so we also have to arrange the space for the 2nd part of the museum. And below the slide, you see one of the pits at the mass killing site of Paneriai. And I saw just briefly with one eye, there was the question about Paneriai, about the Ponar, will the new competition, architectural competition will be announced? So definitely yes. Why the process is very slow? Because this site, the competition for the new architectural idea was already announced many years ago, 7-8 years ago, I believe. But at that time, we had to stop it because the new historical and archaeological non-invasive archaeological methods show that there are new objects to be revealed, and today we have many more objects revealed. And so the idea of the competition, the task for the participants of the competition is very much different already, including many more objects revealed, many more pits revealed. And there is a big interinstitutional commission which conducts the work. So you can imagine, with a big commission, things work a bit slow. This commission is headed by the government of Lithuania. Our museum, of course, is part of the commission. So currently we have to find the spot to build the new visitor center, because who have visited Ponar, I believe that many of our visitors tonight have visited the site. So you remember, you know, that there is a very, very small building which is not equipped for the informational center, neither for even a small exhibition. So we intend to build a new visitor center. It will not be a huge museum. We will not be telling, you know, we'll not be building a huge building, but, you know, visitor center with some basic information will be there. So we have to find the slot, and of course, as per Judaism rules, we cannot build on site, you know, on the human remains. So we are looking for the site, and it takes time. But of course, yes, we are in the process. Unfortunately, this process takes long, but we are on the way. And on the right, you see the building. It's hidden by trees, but it's this building of former Jewish Tarbu Gymnasium. And we are creating a new museum there. The title of the museum is Museum of Culture and Identity of Lithuanian Jews. And currently the building is being renovated. The facades look very nice. This photograph is still quite old, it's before renovation. And the team of designers is working on the exhibition design project, which means that we have prepared all the content. We have given the task. There was the public tender for this idea, and currently the designers are working on that. So we should open it in 2 years from now on. And why could we create this museum? And initially, of course, this was the idea to show ties of Lithuania with the world through its Litvak legacy, because so many Lithuanian Jews who went emigrated to other countries and became very known names, artists, scholars, they are our tie with the world, and we wanted to show it. We wanted to speak about them as part of Lithuanian legacy as well. So this was the first idea of such a museum. But then, you know, in the course of several years, we changed it a bit. We modified this idea. And of course, there will be a room where we will speak about identity of Lithuanian Jews, of people whose ancestors came from this part of Europe, and how they feel coming back to Lithuania, or coming for the first time and visiting the country of their you know, grandparents or parents, how they feel. And do they feel this being part of Litvak identity or not? It's also important for us. But mainly we will be speaking about different cultural phenomena which were created here in Lithuania, in different, not only in Vilnius, but in different also other places, in different shtetls, Kaunas also, and other and small shtetls. And because, you know, it's very important for us to speak not only to our visitors from abroad, and we have many tourists, of course, not now during the pandemic times, but we have many visitors from other parts of the world who have these roots, and they come and they visit in the museum. But we want to be a relevant museum to our Lithuanian audiences. And as I have mentioned at the beginning, to show that culture, arts, the contributions of science and scholarship which Jews created here in Lithuania were very important for the development of the country, of this country. And that's why we want to be a modern museum in the sense of that it would be relevant to all people who live here, not only to visitors from abroad. And finally, below you see the wooden building in Druskininkai. So this is the only department of the museum which is outside Vilnius. And Druskininkai is a health resort, a small health resort, and it's a home place, the birthplace of a world-famous sculptor, Jacques Lipchitz. And this is the museum dedicated to him, and it's also being renovated, and for many years it also stood neglected because we did not have any funds. And just recently, a month or so ago, we also got this news that this museum also will be funded, to be renovated, and it also makes us very, very happy. So we also move on with this project. We don't have sculptures of Lipchitz, unfortunately, not yet. And if someone is willing to donate, so please do that. We are waiting. Just kidding, of course, but who knows? Who knows? But we have his memorial collection of his letters, his family photographs, letters and documents of his relatives. So it will be more like a memorial museum, but of course we have some lithographs by Lipchitz. We will be showing them, and hopefully we will get some sculptures in the future. So these are the buildings. So currently open are only three: Tolerance Center and Samuel Bach Museum, Holocaust History Exhibition, and Paneriai Mass Killing Site. And these other three are on the way. And curators are working with the contents, and also the team members are working with the technical projects. So we're on the way.
So if I understand correctly, your museum is spread out in many different locations. That's something very distinctive about the museum. And it seems that you use these buildings in order to relate to, on the one hand, the history of the Holocaust, and also with these new plans, your renewal plans, to be able to tell the history of Lithuanian Jewish culture. Now, there are many questions and comments. Obviously, there are a lot of the audience here have a personal connection to Lithuanian Jewish culture, and I assume Lithuanian culture, history in general. And so there's a lot of passion in the questions, and a lot of pain of how do you tell this story, how do you relate to the Jewish past and also the Jewish present. Will the museum also deal with the Jewish community today, or is it more about the Jewish culture and history before the Holocaust?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, but I would say that we deal with today's Jewish cultural life, not only Lithuanian, but also bringing different artists and historians from other countries. We cooperate with some Jewish museums, so we do it in temporary exhibitions, because of course we want to show contemporary artists, some contemporary discussions relating to today's life. But the museum buildings will be dedicated to history, and of course Samuel Bach is an artist who lives today, but he also connects, because he's our his life connects us today with painful history of the Holocaust, because his family was killed. He and his mother only survived. So his story is unique, and it relates presence to the past very, very strongly. And his museum, by the way, is extremely popular with visitors. People find his story very appealing and his works very appealing. So this is a wonderful example of how we cooperate with today's Jewish artist who is from Vilna. But speaking about these exhibitional departments, so far there has not been the department, the exhibitional department, which would tell the history of cultural phenomena in a historical context, of Lithuanian input into Lithuanian culture, science, politics, even into different fields. So that's why we feel that it's very important to tell it, because who will tell if not us? So this building in the former gymnasium, because it has classes, you know, so we will so different rooms will be dedicated to different phenomena. We will have space dedicated to literature, space dedicated to music, to theater, to languages which Lithuanian Jews used, and so on. So we have to tell it, because still there is not so much knowledge about it in contemporary Lithuania, though people are getting more and more open, I would say. People are interested, at least, you know, many people we meet at the museum, they want to know more. So we feel it's very important to present the history, because it's scattered in many different institutions. It's scattered, but we want to show it in one building, in one place, to get the panorama of what the contribution of Lithuanian Jews was to this country. So, but yes, of course, in temporary events, we of course we work with a contemporary artists and scholars researching different phenomena.
Let me just ask this quick question, because that's related. What's the time frame for when these buildings are going to be open?
This building we expect to be open in 2 years from now, maybe a bit sooner, but it's about 2 years. This building and Druskininkai is the last project we start now, so it will take longer, maybe 3-4 years. Vilnius Ghetto Library, maybe 3 years. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but you know, if we have funding and if we have a good team, I think everything is possible. So let's be optimistic.
So now that we have a sense of the different departments and branches and the different buildings, why don't you take us on a tour of some of the items that you've prepared to show, and then there's a very long list of questions, and we'll get to them. I know there are audience members who are very eager to have their questions answered, but let's take a look at the collections of the museum itself, and then we can look at some of these questions.
Sure. So Raquel, you told that it will be a virtual tour, so it will not be like a tour, but I will show some pictures and I will give some brief comments. Just some information that the museum collection consists of about 39 exhibits, and I've mentioned the story of them is very, very diverse. We have collections from the previous museums, items, rescued during the Holocaust, and it's also in not only in documents and writings, but it's also in paintings and sculptures which were rescued by the paper brigade. And of course we have ritual objects, and also we have our collection during these last 30 years expanded greatly due to the donations from different countries we receive, and donations from artists who have Lithuanian Jewish roots. And we got a donation from artist Rona Gorvi in South Africa, for example, and we got a donation of Cornelius Gurvit works by Dr. Huber Ports from Germany, and donation of works of Joshua Kowarski from US. So we have many wonderful items still coming to the museum, and we're very happy about it. So the most precious, of course, those who have visited the museum, of course, you have seen those 3 items, which are the treasures of the museum, the highlights, one of the very, very biggest highlights we're proud of. And these are originals from the great Synagogue of Vilnius. So you can imagine what it means to Lithuania, that it survived the wars, all the calamities, and it's there, original in, you know, reminding us the glory of the great synagogue and the past of Lithuanian Jewish community. And when we will create the new museum, the Museum of Identity and Cultural Identity of Lithuanian Jews, so these will be transferred to another building, because we will have a separate room speaking about Lithuanian Judaism. So they will find their place in that room. And here on our left, we see the most recent exhibit, because the excavations on site of the great Synagogue of Vilnius were taking place for 8 or 9 years now. Of course, this summer it was not taking place because of the pandemic, but this memorial plaque was found a couple of years ago. And by the way, the team of archaeologists is international, and there is Dr. John Seligman from Israel, who is the head of the team. And so this plaque, you see it's broken, and when it was put together, it tells the story of a rabbi when he traveled to the Holy Land at the end of the 18th century. And this plaque was the donation of his sons to the Vilnius Great Synagogue in the memory of their father. So it was found over the bima of the synagogue during the excavation. So this is also a very exciting addition to our collection, which brings a more full picture to the story. And here on your right, you see a fragment of the model of Vilnius city created in the Vilna Ghetto. And this is another precious exhibit, which will be shown in our new Holocaust History Museum in the former Vilnius Ghetto Library, because currently we cannot show it in our Holocaust History exhibition due to the poor conditions. And why you see the photographs on your left? Because a couple of weeks ago, actually 1 month ago, we have opened the exhibition, the temporary exhibition, dedicated to the rescuing of treasures and to Lithuanian Jewish, saving of Lithuanian Jewish artifacts. And here you see that we exhibit this plastic model, and there are 4 parts remained. And the survival story, again, it's a miracle that it has survived during the war. And so we have 4 special cases created to be exhibited of this precious artifact. And here you see the Holocaust survivor, Hanna Brantsovskaya, who is standing at the exhibit. She came to the opening, and she was the witness, and she saw this model of the Vilnius city. She saw it in the exhibition when it was shown in the ghetto, and the model was created in 1942, 1943. So you see a witness. It was a very powerful moment when she came and she was able to see it exhibited again, because it's the first time we exhibited since the opening of the museum. 30 years it was not being shown. And these 4 parts we have restored it thanks to the Rothschild Foundation, and now we're able to show it to the public. And of course, we have a huge collection of printed materials and manuscripts, and we have a number of artifacts printed by the famous Rome printing house in Vilnius. So this is the Tractat Gittin from the Babylonian Talmud, printed in the middle of the 19th century by the Rome printing house. And this book is from 1600, and this was found in the Kaunas Ghetto after the war. And this was rescued by the survivors, and it was shown in this first museum after the war, in this first museum created by the survivors. So it's also a very, very precious artifact. It was published not here, it was published in Germany, but it carried the story of being rescued and surviving the Holocaust. And some fragments of diaries. And of course, we have a very precious diaries which testify of what happened. And here you see the fragment of diary of Zeli Kalmanovich, one of the leaders of the YIVO Institute in Vilnius. And this is another part is in YIVO Institute, and we have this part here in Vilnius. So also we are showing it at this current exhibition for the first time. It was not shown before. And you have mentioned already Abraham Sutskever, so we have also his series of poem Faces in Swamp here, created in 1941. And so we have his manuscript. And this, after the war, this poem occurred in the Central State Archives. And as I've mentioned, that many of these rescued artifacts, they were scattered in different museums and archives in the country. And when our museum was reopened, these institutions, they gave it back to us. So this was the very kind gesture of the colleagues to give it back to our collection. And here is the fragment of Herman Krug, Memento Mori, and this fragment of his diary written in the Kloga concentration camp, and it's about the situation in the camp. So also a fragment. So Herman Krug, of course, he was the head of the Vilnius Ghetto Library and also involved in rescuing the artifacts. So these are personalities which not only deserve to be researched properly, but also presented to our audience. So that's why we're very happy to be on the process of creating the new museum dedicated to the Holocaust history, and we will be able to show the real exhibits, to show it for public, because I believe that the real items, the real documents, the real artifacts, they have power, especially when they have their story, because the power of the exhibit is its story. You have to tell the story. Otherwise, it's just the book, or just a manuscript. We have extensive photograph collection, and these are just a few, and I would like to mention this one, for example. This was taken in 1924 in one of the shtetls, Alytus, and here you can see the members of Lithuanian army who are Jews, and they are ready to have their Pesach Seder in the army. So this is a fascinating picture, photograph, because Lithuanian army had different spiritual leaders for different religious groups, and of course Jewish members of the army had the rabbi who was leading them, Rabbi Samuel Sniegas, and so they were ready to have their Pesach celebration in the army. And here on the right, there is a very, very powerful and very sad and photograph taken immediately after the war, 1945. And this is the courtyard of the Great Synagogue. And this is the burial of the Torah. So you can see people who survived, they're gathered in the courtyard, and they're trying to be Jewish community again. After what happened, after the destruction, they came together, and they're saying goodbye to their Jewish history of the country, to their Jewish culture, and that's extremely powerful and sad photograph. These two were taken, and this was taken during the First World War, and this is also again a small Jewish musical band in another shtetl, Kėdainiai, which also had a big Jewish community. And when I speak about shtetls, of course, shtetls had huge Jewish communities which were very active in music, in sports. They had their football teams, they had their music bands, they had their shops, of course. So the life was very rich. And also in our museum, we speak not only about the Vilnius, but about the small towns as well. Painting and sculpture. Here you can see these works, sculpture of Naum Arnson, which was rescued by the Paper Brigade, work of Černė Percikovičiūtė, a very gifted young artist in the interval Kaunas who perished in the Kaunas ghetto. So you can see her work, which is very interesting because she shows a young woman as an active in social life, which was also very new at the time, to picture women who were active and not being only, housewives. And work of Emanuel Manekats, work of Isai Kulvansky, very famous painters and artists, and this work they also rescued during the war. And above you see the modern piece created in the 1990s by Adomas Jacovskis, who is a contemporary artist and scenographer. And so we also have some works of contemporary artists, not only of the past. And I have mentioned Samuel Bach, so just briefly, one of the very unique artifacts is the old pinkas of the Jewish community of Vilnius, which was given to young Samuel in the Vilna ghetto that he would be able to draw, because he was a very gifted kid in the Vilnius ghetto and he had no paper where to practice properly. So Sutskever and Kačerginski gave him this pinkas and told him that please draw what you see, just be a witness, draw what you see. And small boy, he was 8-9 years, he drew what he saw, And for many years, he was not even aware that this pincus is still there. He thought that this pincus is lost. And when he came to Vilnius to the opening of his museum, he saw this pincus with his drawing. And his drawings are about 200 in this book. So there is an extensive collection. And here you see on the right, you see one of his most recent works, and we have collection also of about 150 works or so. And he's very productive artist, and we have his works in his first drawings in the Vilnius Ghetto till today. And he's a close friend of the museum, and we are so happy and proud of it. And here, now at the end, because I was asked to choose one exhibit for presentation, so this is the final one I chose. And I will tell why, because I wanted to choose something which is unique and it's very beautiful, and also something which has a very, very interesting story of survival, and which testifies to creativity of the human spirit, creativity and imagination. And also that it was created not in Vilnius, not in Kaunas, but in one of the small towns. And because we have it, it's remained thanks to the efforts of people who understand the value of culture and who helped to rescue it, even though it was rescued by a Lithuanian art historian, Paulius Galone, and it was kept for many years in the National Čiurlionis Art Museum in Kaunas, and for several decades we have it at our collection. And it's a treasure because of its uniqueness. So I present the person who created this masterpiece. Aron Lazarheit, you see his dates when he lived, and he was Jewish folk artist. And actually we have the only such example of such prolific Jewish folk art. And he lived in Kelmė, in a small northwestern Lithuanian town. And he carved and decorated Aron Kodeshes and painted the interior of the Kelmė Synagogue, and also worked with tombstones. And his work, The Throne of King Solomon, was inspired by the biblical story of King Solomon, whom everyone knows, of course, and also by interpretation of this story in the second Targum. And here you see the composition of these carvings, how we had presented it at the museum, at the Tolerance Center branch. Now the composition is not there because for being there, for open for visitors for many years now, it needs to rest a bit. And therefore now it is inside the collection department. But you can see what is left from the composition. And I want to show some details. You see the wonderful throne and the candlestick with 15 branches and many, many details. And the story is, it was a huge composition of about 10 meters length, 5 meters width, and 3 meters height. And the artist, he created it with such a passion. And he was sure that when he will create it, all the sufferings of Jews will end. And this was kind of messianistic concept, messianistic idea and belief he had. And how we know this story, by the way, my colleague at the museum, now she's the chief curator, Dr. Aistė Račiūnienė. She did the research. When she wrote her PhD, this was one of her interested topics she got interested in, and she did this research. And that's how we came to know about the story of creation. And actually, there are memoirs of his son, Yaakov Haidt, how the boy, when he was 12 years old, how he saw the composition, what happened. Because when Haidt created it, he saw that nothing is happening. The messianistic world is not coming. The situation stays as it was. And at the end of his life, he felt that he had committed a sin because of one of the 10 commandments, not to make any image. And he started breaking and burning these pieces. And his son of 12 years old, when he came back from school, he saw his father destroying these works, and he managed to stop it. So this is what has remained, because there were, what my colleague has written, there were about 200 human figurines. King Solomon figurine was the most lavish one, and you can see it's all made of wood, and the decoration, it's a lot of golden color in it. And the King Solomon was extremely lavish, but it's gone. We are not able to trace him. There were about 200 figurines, members of Synedrion and different other characters. And there are plenty of symbols of animals, of carvings, of different wonderful carved pieces of art. So, we are so lucky that it was rescued, first of all, of course, by the son of the artist, and secondly, when it was transferred, because his wife, after Haid's death, his wife gave the collection to the YIVO Institute. Then it happened to occur in Kaunas Ethnographic Society. Then during the war, Professor Galone managed to save it and to put it in the National Čiurlionis Museum. But of course, they saw that these are nice items, but nobody knew what it was eventually. So it was told that these are Jewish dolls. And then the curator, Dr. Niunkaitė Račiūnienė, she did the research, and I think in 1993, if I'm not mistaken, this collection was given to our museum. So this is a fantastic story. Now it needs to be restored, and we hope that one day again we will show it for public. So so that's it. Hopefully I'm not too long. I'm sorry if I took too much of your time. And
thank you so much. There's just a quick question. What are the dates of the artist shape?
Yes, the exact date of his birth is not known, but it's about 1860, and he died in 1928.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see some of these items up close. And here, for those who asked, here are some websites for the museum. As you are seeing, you are receiving a lot of thanks from the audience members. Now, there have been many different kinds of questions. I will turn this over to my colleague Doron in a minute, but I just want to mention some of the themes of the questions. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to all of them. I think that would take another hour or so, the themes that I saw in the questions start with specific questions about the museum and how decisions you've made about the museum and who you're working with, cooperating with different kinds of scholars like David Fishman or other Jewish museums in other places. There are questions about the Lithuanian Jewish community today, both to hear a little bit about the community today and also what is their connection to the museum. There were several questions about Holocaust education. I think in general, people are interested to hear about Holocaust education in Lithuania, and also how does Lithuania deal with the history, its own difficult, problematic history of collaboration with the Nazis, and whether the fact that you're a state museum does that limit your ability to deal with painful topics, and people who are interested in learning more. So those are the general themes that allow you to start thinking about these questions. And I want to turn the mic over to my colleague Doron, who will raise some specific questions for you that he saw in the chat. Doron?
Raquel, can I answer some of these now?
Sure, these were the general versions of the questions, but by all means.
Okay. No, because I have noticed down several questions which I would like to start with. And of course, because as you said, there are many questions, so I will try to be very brief for each of the questions. And I will start, I think, with the last one. Someone asked, being state museum does limit our abilities in research of history and in presentation of Holocaust history and collaboration. So I can say no. Being state museum means that we just get some basic funds for our functioning, but we are completely free to conduct the research the way we see it, and as I told, the main goal for us is to be professional institution. So we have no political, how you put it, no political agenda and no comments and no tasks from from the ministry or from the government. So this I can really say we're very happy and we are lucky that we can work really freely. And relations with the painful questions of collaboration. Yeah, so what I have mentioned, that us being a museum, we do our work and we speak about collaboration in our exhibition, in our education. And speaking, the question about Holocaust education in general in Lithuania. So of course, on the one hand, it is still quite problematic because at schools there are very, very less lessons dedicated to it, and it all depends on the personal awareness of the teacher, I would say. So of course we have teachers who bring kids to the museum in order to speak from the school book, to read about the Holocaust from the school book. They take kids to the museum or to the mass killing site or to the local killing sites, because Lithuania has several hundred killing sites. Each town, small town, has its own killing site. So I know teachers who do it, who take children and they commemorate it and they see the site. But of course, general teaching, of course, is not enough. So of course, we also cooperate with different institutions in organizing general seminars. So it's also answering to one of the questions with whom we cooperate. So we cooperate not only with the several Jewish museums in other countries, but also with Mémorial de la Shoah in Paris. We have organized several seminars on the Holocaust education for teachers with USHMM. Excuse me for a moment. So Holocaust education, yes, it's very important. So we cooperate with other institutions regarding that, because we alone, we have very small resource, of course. So it's always better to cooperate with the institutions you can trust and whom they're working in a professional way. Yes. So of course, maybe Dora, maybe you continue, because these were the questions I managed to put down.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you very much, first of all. Firma asked, does your museum contribute records to the European Music Catalog, OPAC, called RISM? Thanks.
Unfortunately, no. We do not.
Thank you very much. There's a little bit of a loaded question here by Nathaniel. In Holocaust countries, in parentheses, where new anti-Semitism is on the rise, how do you integrate the lost and destroyed past with the present?
Of course, that's a very good question. When we do our events, we try to speak not only about the past historical facts and what happened, but to relate to today's life, and especially when young people come to the museum, because it's a problem of discrimination, of intolerance, and it all starts from the place where you are standing. It all starts from each individual. So it's very important for us, and we relate it. When we do our educations, our educators and our guides, they always bring this topic. And also we do some events related not only, for example, to Jewish history, but like to history, not to history, but to the relevant hot topics, for example, of refugees. And in a couple of days at the museum, we'll have one event speaking about refugees in the 1939 and refugees in today. What does it mean to be a refugee today? So we try to link different experiences and to be a relevant institution, as I have told at the beginning, not to be lingering only in the past, which is extremely important, of course, because still we need to do this homework for the country, but to be relevant. And of course, we're still finding the ways because it's new. Sometimes we are not sure how to deal with it, but we are trying. We're trying, and we're looking for new ways, of course.
Thank you very, very much. I would like to read one of the compliments. Gabriel wrote, "This has been a very interesting, educational, and enlightening talk, and the photographs fantastic to see and very emotional. Congratulations on your plans for this important museum. Thank you." So that was very nice.
Thank you.
I thought that would be nice. Marion asks, a medieval synagogue was discovered by John Seligman in recent years. Will this site be included as part of the museum?
So this memorial plaque I have shown, so this is from the research Dr. Seligman and his team have conducted. And with the site was transferred to the Jewish community of Lithuania. So there's still ongoing debates how to commemorate that site, what to create there, and how to commemorate. Because of course, there is not because I know in the past there were some ideas of rebuilding the great synagogue, but there is no sense, of course, because there are no community who will go to the synagogue, and it's just a grandeur idea which has no reason today. But what to do there, how to commemorate, because it has to be something, of course, that the place that you come and you see the place, you know what the place, because of course there is a plaque which stands there now, but it's not appealing, it's not emotional, it's just a plaque. So to this question I cannot give a full answer because the Jewish community has some plans, and if we will be involved, we will be more than happy to to suggest some ideas and to contribute.
Thank you very much. Dina asked, Lithuanian Jews were very cultivated. Does the museum have a section about literature, books, poems, music dedicated to the Lithuanian Jewish production?
Yes, exactly. So this will be the space I have told about the new Museum of Culture and Identity of Lithuanian Jews. We will have special rooms dedicated to literature, music, theater, languages. So exactly what we are creating right now.
Thank you very much. A question by Adriana. Does the community have some kind of influence in the museum?
Okay, I would not say influence because there are things which the community and us are doing. The goals are the same, actually, to commemorate and to present Lithuanian Jewish history and culture. But of course, their role is more social because they have the community, they have to take care of the people, they're active in different social events. And we are mostly working in the research and spreading the collection in different ways. But of course, we cooperate when we see some certain points of being able to do some common projects. So we have, actually the community has published, but we have given beautiful images from our collection. So the new Jewish calendar for this Jewish year was done together by the museum and by the community. This is a small example, but of course, yeah, so we're happy to have points of meeting to do something together.
Thank you very much. Susan asked, please address the Jewish community in Vilnius now. Is there an active community? If we are of Lithuanian descent, can we contact members of the Vilna community?
Yes, of course. There is the website of Lithuanian Jewish community. You have mentioned Vilnius Jewish community. So there are several communities. There is Vilnius Jewish community, which is a separate one. There is the Lithuanian Jewish community, which unites communities in different towns. So the best thing is to go to the website and to contact them. They have their contact addresses, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. Hinda asked, what is the connection between the Jewish Museum and the research in the Vilna Gaon Synagogue?
Pardon, can you just please specify the question?
I can reread it. What is the connection between the Jewish Museum and the research in the Vilna Gaon Synagogue?
Mm-hmm. Vilna Gaon Synagogue, you mean the documents from the Vilna Gaon Synagogue?
I'm sorry, maybe Hinda asked the question. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe can just expand the question a little bit.
Maybe I'll try that. Is the Vilna Gaon Synagogue part of the museum? So there's the physical building, and also the documents that you referenced. Is that part of the museum collections? Is that are those documents available for you to do research?
Mm-hmm. The documents which I showed, they belong to our collection, but the site of the Vilna Gaon Synagogue, it's nothing there on the site. It's because it was the complex with a great synagogue, so of course nothing is there now. The archaeological research is being conducted, so some items we get to our archaeological collection. The site itself has been transferred to the Jewish community, has been given over, but I'm not sure if I got the question. So, but this question gave me a hint. I have not mentioned our cooperation with the Judaica Center at the National Lithuanian Library, where they have extensive collection of writings and different documents, which we have found recently, a couple of years ago. So we're happy to cooperate with them, and as I mentioned at the beginning, Dr. Lara Lempertiene, who is head of this Judaica Center, she's close friend and colleague, and so we're happy to work together and to cooperate.
Thank you so much. I don't think we have any more questions. Raquel, I'm sure you have some closing words. After Raquel speaks, I will open everyone's microphone so that you can say thanks personally. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in our next event.
Kamilė, it's been a pleasure, and it's been a fascinating journey. Hearing from you, your own story, the way you're so open about the difficult, painful, complicated history of Lithuania, but also to highlight the grandeur and the richness of Lithuanian Jewish culture and history. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for your meticulous research and your dynamism. All of the expansion plans that you've discussed are very exciting. And I encourage everyone, please God, when we clear Corona, to go visit, to check the website at least, and possibly we can come visit on different cultural tours and to experience firsthand what you are building. So thank you so much for everything you have shared with us today, and I wish everyone a good evening, to health and safety during this time, and continue to come visit us at the National Library, the International Reading Room, where every few nights there is another adventure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Raquel, Doron, and everyone at the library. And if you would like to share your stories, if you have Lithuanian Jewish origin, please contact us. We're waiting for your stories. Please be in touch. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Kamilė and another lady, and just to add that last year in summer, the Kiryat Ono Youth Orchestra from Israel has performed at the museum at the invite of the museum as a project, a mutual project between the Lithuanian youth, and the project was called Shalom Lietuva, as a second generation of Holocaust survivors. For me, it was very important that the orchestra of our town performed at the museum, and they have established very good context with the Lithuanian youth.
Thank you.
This is the kind of initiative that our world needs. Thank you for sharing with us, and please do other presentations for us so that we can learn and connect with the Jewish community. Maybe there's a way that families around the world can connect as like twin families or adopt a family. With Zoom, we can do so much to get to know each other. And most of us did not live through World War II, or many of us did not, and it would allow us to pay back in the way that is international love. So maybe you can think of that and do it through schools or through the museum itself. Toda rabba achu.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I will absolutely send the chat transcript to Dr. Kamilė and Dr. Raquel. Thank you so much, everyone. See you in our next event. Laila tov.